everyone, and welcome to Groove Builders. I'm your host, Disorderly Cone, and in this episode, we're going to be building Neuschwanstein Castle from the guys over at Metal Earth. Now, this castle has some pretty interesting history in regards to fantasy and murder. But before we get too far carried away into that, Groove Builders, let's get down to the workbench to take a look at the package.
Alright, Groove Builders, welcome to the workbench. We have our Metal Earth Neuschwanstein Castle in some pretty awesome classic Metal Earth packaging. At the top, you'll see a gold edition sticker, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But for right now, this model is 3 sheets, which means it's going to be quite big. Let's take a look at the back. Now, on the back, we get a really nice look at our model in this little picture, and then right next door, we get this QWERTY code, which we can scan to get a 360 view of our model while we're building. This is really good for helping us with detail and some of the tabs around the courtyard. Now, just below, we get some information on Neuschwanstein Castle's history, which is pretty interesting stuff. The last thing we're going to look at is all the little models in this series, which is quite a few of them. Groove Builders, let's go ahead and open up our package. We have our instructions, and we have our 3 sheets of metal. And look at all this detail. Groovers, this is going to be awesome. Let's get building. We begin our build by cutting out parts 1 and 2, and then slowly begin forming them to the directions. Speaking of the directions, let's take a look at them together so that we can better understand what this build has in store for us and what tools you might need if you're looking to build this build yourself. As we look at our instructions, one thing I want to make clear is that this model has been around for a long time, and the instructions that I actually have in my package versus the instructions that you're seeing here on the screen are different, but only by color and layout. The instructions are exactly the same, so we don't have to worry about different parts or pieces with this particular model. Now, looking at the top, we do have a nice little depiction of our model, and just below that we do have that QWERTY code that we can scan to get a 360 view of our model while we're building. Just below the QWERTY code, you get the all-important parts diagram. Now, these 3 pictures here will show us where our parts are on our metal. You'll also notice on your metal that it says A, B, and C. This is great because it helps us quickly identify what sheet of metal goes with what diagram picture. One more pro tip that I like to give all of my Groove Builders out there is to take your metal and orientate it to the directions. The reason for this is it makes it a lot easier for you to find your parts when you need to build with them. Next, we have a piece diagram, which shows us a part from our kit, labeling the tabs, fold lines, and insertion holes. What you want to do is take those insertion tabs and insert them into the holes, either twisting them or bending them 90 degrees. The fold lines are where you want to fold the metal. Now, normally this is indicated in the instructions how you want to build this, so Groove Builders pay very close attention when you're bending and shaping your parts. Then right next door we have the legend. Now the legend contains a whole bunch of information that we're going to see scattered throughout our directions. The first thing we're going to see is that engraved side. Anytime we see this particular symbol, we want to make sure that the engraved side is facing out. Now just below that we see the non-engraved symbol, which is pretty much the opposite of the first one. When we see the non-engraved side, you want to make sure that the non-engraved side is facing up. Now below that we do have an attention point. Now, this one is not very common throughout metal model building, but if you do see the attention point, it's just drawing your attention to a certain part, either because it's easily broken, or it might be a little bit difficult to get inserted. Just below the attention point, we do have the all-important circle. The circles are throughout all of our directions, and when we see them, it's very important to put as much of the tab through the insertion hole as possible, and then take the tab and bend it down 90 degrees. When we see the triangle just below the circle, it's very important to take as much of the tab through the insertion hole as possible and then twist them 90 degrees. Then finally, we have the recommended tool section. Now, Groove Builders, I definitely recommend a good pair of wire cutters, and the reason for that is it makes it so much easier to get all of our pieces out of our metal. If you're sitting down trying to bend the pieces out of the metal, you're going to warp all of your pieces, and the end product is really not going to be that great. By getting a good set of wire cutters, you can ensure that all the little bits of metal are cut off, allowing your pieces to fit very snugly together. Now, just below our cutters, we have tweezers and needle nose pliers, which Groove Builders, I definitely recommend both for this build. Now, when it comes to tweezers, you can pretty much use anything you have around your house. It will do fine. But if you're looking to do this more as a hobby, a lot of the groove builders out there go and get themselves a set of detailed tweezers. A set of detailed tweezers just has a lot more options for you to be able to use in some trickier areas of model building. But with this particular model, a simple pair of tweezers will do just fine. And that, Groove Builders, pretty much sums up our directions. If you have any questions on anything we just covered, make sure to leave a comment down below. R2, K9, and myself do our very best to get back to any questions that we see in the comments section. So, what's up with Neuschwanstein Castle, and why does it look so familiar? Great question, really. Let's start in Germany with our friend King Ludwig II. King Ludwig was a very different king. And in 1866, Bavaria had allied with Austria, and unfortunately, they had lost against the expanding Prussia. Bavaria was forced to accept a defensive and offensive alliance, which removed the king's right to depose his own army in the case of war. That means from 1866 on, Ludwig II was no longer a sovereign ruler. This was the biggest misfortune in his life, and in my opinion, started the road he went down. In 1867, he began planning his own kingdom in the form of his own castles and palaces. He was obsessed with beauty and fantasy and built a world around him in which, far removed from reality, he could feel he was a real king. He wanted to build Neuschwanstein Castle, but wanted something different. He went to a number of architects to find a good castle. All of them, though, just happened to give him classic-looking castles that had been done time and time again. This was not enough for King Ludwig. He wanted a fantasy castle, and to get that kind of design, he would have to go to the set painter Christian Jank. Christian drew a castle for the king that he liked so much, he gave it to his architect Edward Reed to make. Nothing like this had ever been attempted, and the location of the future castle in the mountains made it that much harder to make. King Ludwig had a lot of creative ideas for his castles, and this led to a lot of people thinking that he was, well, odd. And that was only the tip of his problems. Later, 4 psychiatrists met and decided before even meeting him that he was insane. This, along with his horrible debt, led to the government coming to get the king at Neuschwanstein Castle, but they would be unsuccessful on their first attempt. Unfortunately, not long after that though, they would succeed on June 12, 1886. The next day, the king left his fantasy castle and went to a childhood castle 8 hours away. But it wasn't how he remembered it. The king had bars on all of the windows and all the locks on the doors were gone. He was being treated like a madman. This made the king upset, and he arranged a meeting with one of the psychiatrists that deemed him insane. The king left with the doctor, and at 8 p.m. when they didn't return, the servants went looking for them. They found the king and the doctor dead, laying in the river face up. Many people thought this to be a murder-suicide done by the king, and the official reports say the king drowned, but no water was found in his lungs. Bullet holes were also found in his jacket. However, fire destroyed it before anyone could officially make a report. And finally, Groovers, if you didn't think things stunk already, carriage tracks were found at the scene leading to the river, and someone had taken careful planning to retrace the tracks to not show the carriage leaving. A clean getaway. Not long after his death, Ludwig's fantasy castle was renamed to Neuschwanstein Castle, and it continues to inspire people by its beauty today. Remember how I said it may look familiar to you? That's because Walt Disney loved this castle and used its design to inspire castles like Sleeping Beauties and Cinderella's. I think that he would have really liked that.
This place is absolutely amazing. Did you guys see that grand hall? I mean, come on. R2 and K9 are already in the kitchen trying to make up some dinner for tonight. And Groovers, I'm not gonna lie, I'm pretty excited. But before we get too carried away with dinner, let's talk about what it took to build this model in construction. My first point is about pre-bending tabs, and yes, Groove Builders, I've mentioned this one before, but with Neuschwanstein Castle having so many squares and triangles, it really is easier to pre-bend your tabs before connecting the different pieces together. Groove Builders, it's always a good idea to make sure you have as much of the tab through the insertion hole as possible when securing your models together. This will make sure your models are nice and strong and won't fall apart in the end. My second point is about the cones at all the towers. Now, in my video, you guys probably saw me using my doming tool to make sure that all those tabs are equally out on all sides. And the reason why I did this was to make sure that my tower wasn't slightly slanted at the top, a very common problem for a lot of metal models out there. Groove Builders, a doming set is a fantastic tool to make sure that all those tabs are out equally on all sides. A quick little twist will make sure that everything is nice, secure, and straight. My third point is about parts 23 and 24. Groove Builders, this can be a little bit of a tricky step if you're new to metal model building, and I definitely recommend taking your time with this build. My best suggestion is to take part 24 and bend it as close as you possibly can together, not letting the two pieces touch. Keep in mind, if you bend it completely in half, you do run the risk of breaking your piece. Now, once you've bent it as much as you possibly can, you want to back it into the corner of 23, and then open 24 up. This will allow for the tabs of 23 to go into the holes of 24, allowing you to secure it to your model. Groove Builders, this part can be a little bit tricky, so take your time and have fun. And with that being said, Groove Builders, let's move on to build time. Neuschwanstein Castle took me about an hour and 20 minutes to build, and I think that's going to be about average for most Groove Builders out there. If you're new to metal model building, take your time with this and don't use my hour and 20 minutes as the marker to build. Groove Builders, it's not a race, and at the end of the day, your model's only going to look as good as the amount of time you put into it. And with that, Groove Builders, let's move on to my thoughts. Groovers, Neuschwanstein Castle is a very interesting build, and not necessarily because of the construction. At the top of the package, you may have noticed a little sticker saying Gold Edition. Now, I was really confused by this because nothing in the package was gold, and when I looked online, I really couldn't find anything about Metal Earth having a gold edition of Neuschwanstein Castle. So I reached out to the Reddit community for help, and what I got was the gold edition simply means 3 sheets. And it was really only done on early Metal Earth models, so all the new metal model builders out there won't really have to worry about the confusion with the Gold Edition sticker. Only the old models that are still in circulation have those stickers. Outside of that though, Groove Builders, Neuschwanstein Castle is a really awesome build to build, and if you're looking for a nice big model that's not really too tricky, I would say look no further, because Neuschwanstein Castle has a lot to offer. And with that, Groove Builders, we're at the end of our show. I had a really good time building Neuschwanstein Castle with you, and if you guys had a good time, don't forget to press that like button. For more videos like this, hit subscribe as well, as we got all kinds of really cool content coming out in the future. Until next time, Groove Builders, keep building! Ooh, that stew does smell good.